Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to the Annapolis NOOD Debrief from rainy Annapolis, as typical after a nice regatta that we had here. So I want to welcome everyone to discuss this past weekend's event. And first, I'll introduce the North Sails Chesapeake team that's on the call here with us. Why is this not working? Here we go. I'm Allan Terhune. For those of you who don't know me, I'm accompanied by Zeke Horowitz. Zeke, you out there?
I'm here.
Right, and Jonathan Bartlett, who I believe is also with us.
Evening, everyone.
And last but certainly not least, the man, the legend, Mr. Austin Powers. Are you with us?
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, first thing before we get into talking about the event this past weekend, we want to congratulate all of our many successful clients who did really well this weekend. Here's a list of all the winners. For anyone who's on the winner list here that is on this Zoom call with us to discuss the regatta this weekend, send an email to Austin and he will make sure that you get a North Sails hat for coming to this awesome call and listening in and for your success this weekend. So it's austin.powers@northsails.com to be able to sort you out. But we want to kick off the conversation. It was a really great weekend. It seemed like everyone really had a great time. So I'll throw it to you, Jonathan, first. What was your impression getting back out on the water and doing some racing?
Well, we've been waiting a long time. We were supposed to have this nude regatta back in mid-May this year, which was going to be a couple weeks late anyhow. And once COVID hit, we all got canceled in our sailing world. And we were able to reschedule this. Annapolis Yacht Club was able to reschedule this with those guys at Sailing World for late August, and it just seemed like time had stopped for a lot of us. And to finally get to this point, to see people sailing last weekend, we had 79 boats, I think is what the number was that ended up out sailing. And it was remarkable. Annapolis, from my perspective, handled this event really well. I think people felt socially distanced on shore when they were putting their boats in the water at all three clubs. The cooperation of all the sailors, and really, and the race committee and the Sailing World, who set up the event, is fantastic. So you look at the picture; it's pretty obvious. People are excited to be back out on the water and competing in a sailboat race again. So from my perspective, I was really happy to be part of it.
Awesome. And I saw Zeke out there. He had a pretty successful weekend, his first outing in the J80, but I'm sure he was on the same course as you were. But, from talking to him, it seemed like everyone was out there really having a good time. Zeke, is that what you felt?
Yeah, no doubt. It was smiling faces everywhere. It was kind of cool. There were a few instances where you saw a couple people kind of a little bit rusty in the pre-start or around marks or something like that. And when a foul happened or something, everybody was all smiles and laughs and, doing their penalty turns and you're like, oh, my bad, it's been a little while. So it was definitely good, I think, for everybody to just be back out there, shaking the rust off, getting back in the swing of things. I know for us, it was like getting out there an hour early to the race course and seeing other boats. And you're like, what? I guess we're supposed to go tune up with them or do a split tack or something like that, do some race course homework. It's just been such a long time since all of us have been able to do that it was just, kind of brought back all the fun, love, and feelings of being able to participate in a regatta. And I thought that, as usual, the three big clubs here in Annapolis, Annapolis Yacht Club, Eastport Yacht Club, and Severn Sailing Association did a really outstanding job kind of teaming up and running great races and dealing with all the, particulars having to do with running regattas with COVID. They all handled it with grace. Everybody was safe. And it was just really cool to see kind of the community of sailors here in town come together and put the regatta on. So it was fun to be a part of.
Awesome. All right, so Austin, we're gonna kick it to you next, and we're gonna start off with this nice photo of you. So here's Austin sailing on the Viper that won this weekend with Tyler Moore. I believe it's Tyler Moore's wife, Austin, or girlfriend. Correct me if I'm wrong. Wife, girlfriend.
Wife, yeah.
Wife and Austin's girlfriend. If you see, Austin is the only one that's not hiking here. He's just kind of going for a ride and. Cool here, the man of mystery. But in all seriousness, these guys won this weekend. And Austin, talk a little bit. You were on the circle with the J22s, the J24s, the J30s, Allberg 30s. You had a bunch of classes on the circle. Talk about the sailing this weekend and maybe a couple things you took out of it.
Yeah, so this weekend was an awesome weekend, and it was definitely some shiftier conditions and some wind directions that we don't really get this time of year normally. And for me, I came into town about a year ago, and I'm still really getting used to sailing in that northwesterly breeze. So the first few races that we had, we were really kind of on the back foot, getting the boat back up to speed. I'd never sailed with Tyler before this, even though we've known each other for a very long time, and we just kind of figured each other out. And the Viper fleet was great. I think we had 8 boats going to start with, and we were dipping and dodging and weaving in and out of the Allbergs and the J30s, and we had a lot of different boats sailing quite different downwind jiving angles, which made it very, very fun to pick your next angle of attack to cut through, like an Allberg 30, and then sail high of a J24 and then jive in front of a J22. It made it a very interesting weekend out on the water.
Awesome. And I think it was, like you were saying, sailing in Northwester here is definitely tricky. We'll get back to that in a second, but we're going to come to now, we'll go to the next photo, and here's a picture of Sarah Alexander sailing her J80, and we happen to have the top 2 J80 team members, at least on this call, with Zeke and Jonathan. So I actually have 2 questions for you. So Zeke, this was, you happened to win the regatta, but it was your first time sailing a J80, first time sailing with a new team. So talk about a couple things you thought about sailing with a new team, sailing a new boat, just to, to get it over the line there.
Yeah. Well, I was very lucky to be stepping onto a really nice boat and a really well-organized team that have been sailing together a lot with, Will and Marie Crump and Marie's brother, Thomas. Marie actually wasn't able to join us last minute. She took the kids to Denmark to go start school. So we were very fortunate to pull a junior sailor in from the club named Aiden, who did a terrific job on the bow. So it was his first time racing on the J80, my first time on the J80, but Will and Thomas have been sailing together for a number of years very successfully. So, they had the boat dialed in, the speed was good, and all I really had to worry about was tactics and pulling the kite in and out. So I didn't have to touch many lines, which makes me very happy. Just kind of worry about tactics, but it was really fun. Kind of, I think it helped keep an emphasis on learning, the fact that we were learning each other and that I was learning a new boat, Aiden was learning a new boat. And I think anytime that you can, approach a regatta with an emphasis on keeping a steep learning curve, you're going to have more success than when you go in kind of feeling comfortable and not hungry to figure out new things and learn new things. So it was a really fun, I was shocked how competitive the class was. There was nothing in all those races. Our very first finish of the first race, I think there were 4 boats finishing virtually overlapped with the downwind finish. So it was really, really fun. It was fun to see this all girls team with Sarah Alexander. They were super fast upwind, really sound tactically, and everybody was kind of mixing it up. So I learned a ton about, tuning the boats. My big takeaway was it's a J boat and they all kind of sail the same. And we were, the conditions were really shifty up and down. There was a lot of chopped up water from having 4 different fleets on one course. So I thought, my big takeaway was be sure you're setting the boat up for power and airing on, tuning for the lighter spots. Be ready to, the biggest thing that I thought was managing the headstay tension and the luff tension on the jib. And I think that probably goes for all of these different J boats and probably every sailboat that's out there, is making sure that when you need power, you're able to sag the headstay and power up the jib, twist off the main, and let the bow come down and just get going fast. So making sure that backstay gross tune adjustment was tuned correctly, I thought was a really important thing, so that when you did ease the backstay, it would ease enough to sag the headstay and power the boat up. So that was one big thing that I took away from sailing the 80. But I'll tell you, we spent certainly the second half of the regatta following Commodore Bartlett here around with John White. They were so fast upwind. So I know I was looking for all the go fast tips from him.
So before we get to that, for all the folks out there listening, the chat room is open. If you have any specific questions, feel free to send them and we'll try to address them as much as we can. And we will get to that. Now, Jonathan, you guys got second. You've sailed with John for a long time. John's won the North Americans, I think, a couple times at least. And, what are 1 or 2 things that you think is key to making a J80 really go well?
Well, it's the exact opposite from Zeke's perspective or, situation last weekend. This is a crew that's sailed together for almost the last 10 years. And so, it's like putting an old glove on when you go back onto, certain sailboats. I think we all have that in in our back pocket somewhere where we go sail with people we've sailed with for a very long time. So when I get on the boat with John White and Debbie Goslin and Kevin White, for me, I get on the boat as a sail trimmer, as a jib trimmer, spinnaker trimmer, and a tactician. And it's a full-on workout all day long for me, which I really enjoy because it's really the only boat I truly trim sails on anymore. And so the opportunity to get to go on this boat and sail J80s is always, gets me cranked up to get out there. I was really happy Zeke sailed with Will. And it really pushed us to get our act together after the first race. There's no question the J80 class has stepped their game up in in the past 3 years. We had a guy named Mike Hobson out there who's been sailing forever. He's a superb sailor in Annapolis. And for the younger guys in Annapolis sailing, he's really a local legend. And he ended up third. He just nipped out Sarah and the girls on more cowbell here. But, when you put Sarah Alexander onto a boat that's perfectly prepared with good sails and really good, a good team, they instantly became, a big part of the problem for all of us this weekend. So it's fun to see this class grow. It's fun to see this class, get new people in it locally. And we all have to, work on all our classes that we're racing in to really encourage and share information with one another as we, keep sailing on. And again, it was really fun racing against Zeke. I'd never had a chance to do it before. I liked the style of how he, ran his boat on the race course and how conservative he was at given times out there, and he knew when to take chances. It was really good to watch. And so I actually really enjoyed it, and it was fun beating him a couple races too.
Well, it was fun trying to beat you, Jonathan, for sure. Well, real quick, we had a question come up into the chat from Tim, and I thought we could address it right now while we're kind of talking about this race course. I think Tim was on a J70 there. So his question is, with the strong ebbing current, a breeze out of the Severn, and a very favored pin end, would it be more advantageous to start at the pin and tack over immediately rather than starting at the boat and tack over? And I think we'll let maybe Jonathan take a stab at that question, and then we can have Austin address it on for the course over there. But I would just say, from my perspective, the most important thing was being able to start clean and get on the favored tack right away. So we were kind of thinking, even when the pin was really favored, it was like, start wherever you can that you could get on port and get going upwind or up current right away. But Jonathan, is that your kind of thought as well?
Well, there's no question a great start anywhere on the line is going to be with clear air. It's going to be the winning move here. But as I think on Sunday, I think this is when Tim's referring to, we had 3 races. Sarah won the first race. You guys won the second race, and we won the third race that day. And each time, the boat that had a really good start ended up winning the race. But as the breeze got lighter, the current became much more important. And when we got some of those holes out there, if you were downstream, you were in trouble. And we were very focused on getting to the right, even if it meant, we sailed, I wouldn't say we sailed through any ships, but we wanted the right side of the course to get upstream during that big ebb, just so when it started to ease as the day would go on, we would be able to, take advantage of being up current. And both you guys actually made it work better than anyone in any of the races that day, Zeke, where you got a big lefty and were able to make it work in the middle of the course. But I was very much adamant to want to be on the right side of that race course. And so the last race we started at the boat, and it wasn't favored, but we tacked, within, I would say, 2 minutes over to port tack, and we had a good lead at the weather mark.
Yeah, it seemed like it just being on port, even if there was a big lefty, it's like the lefty wasn't even really happening because you weren't making any headway up the course. You were just like, it was just like a pause button. And then eventually the lefty would fade out, and being up tide seemed to be better. I was the most surprised person on the course that the left worked out for us the race we won. How'd you guys deal with it on the inside course, Austin?
So we probably weren't getting like it quite as much current, especially at the top of our course where we were, but it was still definitely a factor. But the one thing we did kind of keep in mind, and the way it worked out, at least on Sunday, is almost all three races we were in a big lefty. So there was a big tendency of the fleet to do what Tim is talking about, you know, starting at the pen. And we figured, one, it was always going to come back. It was pretty much oscillating back and forth all day. So we knew if we were in a lefty, the next one was going to be a righty. So we would kind of start underneath of everyone, immediately get onto port. So then we're upstream and sailing up the course, and then wait for the first righty to kind of check back in with those guys. And you know, hopefully if we did it right, we were then putting ourselves between them and the mark. So that was kind of the strategy we had was start closer to the boat and then tack very quickly off, you know, essentially right at the gun.
So, you know, one question I had for all you guys. So go on the next photo. This is a photo of the winning J105 Mirage. You know, the Salvesen team here and Cedric Lewis really put on quite a show here. But one of the things I want to talk with all three of you guys to answer is, you know, these guys clearly, and if I think, you know, the top teams that do well, they do well for a reason. And it seemed to me that one of them was boat handling and just talking through maneuvers and having all that stuff down. So for the three of you guys, I mean, what do you do when you go out to a regatta like this? Do you have a warm up? Do you do something to prepare to make sure that you guys have a system of getting the kite up and down, getting the sails in, you know, maneuvers? What do you guys do to get ready? I mean, essentially this was kind of like the first regatta of the year almost, right? So, you know, what do you guys do? We can start again with Austin and go through the list here. What do you guys do normally to get prepared for something like this? Do you have a routine, or what do you guys normally do?
Well, the group I was with, like I said, it was our first time together. So we try to get out there pretty early on the first day. We always, you know, we put the kite up. We went, you know, we try to do at least 5 or 6 jibes till we kind of figured out, you know, one, our crew mechanics, and two, I think, especially on the Viper, the exit angles change a fair bit depending on the wind strength. So it's good for the owner or for the driver to be able to practice both tacks and jibes and the wind conditions that you're going to see in the race, because all of those, you know, those exit angles are going to change depending on how much breeze there is. And then probably following that, we would go do our pings, and then do another, you know, take the kite down to another upwind lag where we would kind of get our compass dialed in and figured out what our port and starboard tack numbers were to, you know, to find an average for the day, or at least the first race, because obviously with the wind we had over the weekend, it was not that great of an average with the compass that you were getting before the races. What about you, Zeke?
Yeah, I mean, same deal. We were fortunate that we were kind of all in town, so we went out on a Thursday night and did just some focus on boat handling practice so that we all knew where we were supposed to be and knew what our roles were going to be boat handling wise. But the first thing I was thinking about, Allan, when you brought the Mirage team up here is like, God, they're fast. You know, I didn't see a whole lot of their corners going around marks and everything, but we watched all the 105 starts, and it seemed like they were always, you know, bow even at the gun, and 30 seconds after the gun, they were 2 boat lengths punched out and usually heading in the right direction. But even if they weren't heading in the right direction, they would just kind of lay up conservatively and just go really, really fast. And so that's the first thing that, you know, we talk about it all the time, but there's nothing like boat speed. You know, it gives you the opportunity to make mistakes in boat handling or in tactics or in starts sometimes, but the focus on just being the fastest boat out there is so important. And it was really impressive to watch these guys on Mirage. They're so dialed in, and they were always just ripping up wind. And I think it's always comes back to me as just the most important thing, no matter what kind of sailing you're doing. So that's, you know, on the last day we started doing lineups. We asked Commodore Bartlett there to line up with us, and he wouldn't, because, you know, he didn't want to give us his secrets, but we went upwind with
moving his mast step.
Yeah, right. So he says. But we went upwind with Sarah Alexander and the girls team, and it was just so important to figure out, you know, we changed a couple things after that, learned some things, and got faster. And so that's always my number one emphasis getting ready for any regatta.
Jonathan, what about you? Anything in particular that you guys do, or?
Well, you know, when you sail with a crew, you know, as long as I've sailed with John and his crew, you're well practiced, but you're only as good as your last jibe or your, like, you know, your takedown. You have to go out and practice. You need to be ready for the first start. You have to have your mindset. And when you look at Mirage and you look at how they've sailed through the years, this is a really, really long-term team of sailors that have sailed together for plus 30 years. So the length of time they have on getting, knowing one another on the boat, their conversation, I hope, has to do with boat racing, because they don't have to really think about it much right now. They just go so fast, and their maneuvers are seamless. So for any team that's out there trying to want to become that next Mirage, is you got to talk to those guys, find out some of their secrets, try to get on their boat, their boat with them if you can, to go out on a Wednesday night and talk to Frederick or Cedric and try to get some tips from them. But the most important thing they're doing is they're having a good time. And they're having a lot of fun.
Yeah, and the one thing I take from just looking at this photo, if you look, the whole team is forward. They're all in the right position. They've got everyone out of the cockpit. They have people to leeward to help get the boat on the right, fore and aft and side to side heel angle. I mean, it's really done well. So go to the next slide. I actually got a specific question. This isn't the right boat, but J70 specific. So I got a bunch of questions, and I'm going to throw this to Zeke. John Heaton came to town. It's a boat you normally sail on, and obviously he had a really great regatta, won, fairly convincingly. Really the only out-of-town boat in the whole event. So, a couple of things people ask me, why is he so fast? So Zeke, why is the Imperia so fast? Why'd they do such a good job?
Oh, we can't tell you why the Imperia is so fast.
Sure you can.
No, well, they're an extremely well-sailed boat. There's 3 professionals on board, and John Heaton has just stopped at nothing to go sailing this summer. He had us up in Harbor Springs to do the Ugata Regatta up there that we did a month or 2 ago, and then out for the Inshore Verve, and he's been sailing locally in Chicago, and he's just itching to go sailing, and it was really cool that he was able to get a team together and come down here. So he maybe has been a little bit more practiced than some others, which definitely helps, and his crew is outstanding, and they've been sailing together for a long time, and the team was very cohesive. They got here early to go practice and sail in the Annapolis waters, but we watched a bunch of their starts going right after them, and I thought the biggest thing that they did is they just took advantage of an open pin end start. I think in these small, we kind of all talk about conservative starting. You don't need to go win the pin, and oftentimes the pin ends up being open for that reason. And they were very, very patient, kind of stayed, to the left of the pin pretty late in the sequence. And you could tell, like, if the pin was open, they would take it. If it wasn't open, they'd sail a little bit further off the line and have a more conservative start. But I bet you 4 or 5, maybe even 6 out of the 9 races, they were pretty uncontested down at the pin. And even if it wasn't favored, getting back to kind of Tim's question, in this small fleet, small starting line stuff, if you're at the pin, you're guaranteed to be able to put the bow down and get the boat rumbling and then just play the next shift from there. And obviously they're really quick and they can rely on their speed, even if they're in the wrong direction a couple times. But that was the biggest thing that I saw from them, is they just very few, zero boat handling mistakes, very good starts, and really fast. It's kind of the magic recipe.
So the next question is going to be a little bit to Jonathan and Austin. So I'm going to start off with Jonathan here. So we have a picture of the J35s, but I think this isn't necessarily a J35 specific question, but going to this format of regatta, right? You had J35s, J105s, J70s, J80s on your circle. Was there one more?
That was it.
That was it.
But the whole festival racing concept, we all say that quite a bit. When you have boats different speed, everyone's on the course at a different point. How do you manage that style of racing? It's different than when you have one fleet on the course all to itself and, you're getting ready to sail your first beat and the whole course is open. Well, in this situation, there's always boats on the course. So how do you think about that when you're sailing these regattas?
Well, I was actually happy there were only 4 J35s for that exact reason. Those are big boats when you're on a J70 or J80, and they'll run us over going upwind. We were generally pretty close to our starting sequence when they were getting to the leeward mark for their first rounding. And so you'd have to make sure you were watching that on, and making sure you were not setting yourself up to be in anyone's bad air after, trying to get a clearing tack if you didn't quite get off the line. But most important thing was on Sunday, we wanted to push Zeke toward those boats as much as we could. I'm not sure it happened. We were able to make it happen once, and it was worth the entertainment for the rest of the weekend. But if you've ever done an Annapolis NOOD Regatta and you've been on the 105s course and the J35 or the J109 course, and you're in a smaller boat, it is, as you call it, festival racing, and you have to be prepared for a lot of bad air, and you have to set your tactics up for that and just be wary of it. With the J35s this weekend, it really wasn't that big a deal. Even though you were watching it, the J105 certainly could have been. We really didn't have much of a any run-ins with that. It was interesting too, and I think Zeke will comment on this. The finish line was set to the left on the run, on the port side of the run, with a separate finish boat and mark, which I think for most of us, we're used to just finishing opposite of the starting line on the other side of the committee boat. And so that cleared things out a little bit, except for one race in the J35s where a J35 was near the gates trying to jibe to go to the finish on the left side. He'd gone a little too far on the right, and the J80s were rounding the leeward mark. And quite frankly, the J35 could not jibe.
Sure.
So it's quite an interesting
No, I do.
thing to see.
Got it. Well, and Austin, I'm gonna throw it to you. I mean, you sailed on the Viper course, and arguably you had the fastest boats in the whole regatta, the Vipers, and the slowest boats in the whole regatta, the Allberg 30s, on the same course, right? So, you know, how did you guys manage that? Because there was, you know, quite a disparity in boats on that course, really, between Vipers, which are planing with A sails. You had J22s, J24s, and then you had Allberg 30s. I mean, totally different boats.
Luckily, we were the first start, at least. So at least we had a fresh slate to begin with. And then once we got onto like lap 2 of the race, then all the other boats started to become an issue. And I think we were the only asymmetrical boat on that course, if I got that right. And so most of the boats were going dead downwind. So every time we if we were to cross the kind of the center line of the downwind, that's when we'd really have a lot of issues with other boats. So we kind of played that into our strategy a bit, where we would definitely pick a side downwind and kind of jibe on that half of the downwind, which kept the other boats a little bit at bay. And I think, like you said, we have a fast boat, so we never wanted the boat not to be moving fast. So if there was ever a decision, if we're coming at a boat going downwind, we could either heat up and go above them or soak low and try and fight through their bad air. We would always take the higher road, especially in that lighter air, because even if we're giving up a little gauge, we're at least going to have momentum coming away from that other boat. Or if we tried to soak in front of a boat and we stopped in that, sub 5 knots of breeze, we were toast. That was kind of always, okay, we think this is going to be a close one. Let's go high, put the bow up, put a little weight on the rail, and live to fight another day.
Awesome. So this is a good photo of one of the J105s. And one of the things that I noticed from being in the coach boat on Friday is that this was obviously the biggest local regatta. There wasn't that many out-of-town boats, but it was very localized. But there was a lot of women and a lot of juniors sailing in the event. So, Jonathan, talk about that a little bit. I mean, it seems really good for the Annapolis sailing scene that this is happening. It wasn't, full of guys and pro sailors, and it was more family sailing, women, kids. What do you think about that, and how is that good for our sailing situation?
Oh, I think this was the summer we all got to get back to our families and get back to the things that really matter to all of us. And, when the opportunity to go sailing with your friends, and I wish we could have had a party this weekend, because I think we would have seen so many happy people just to have the opportunity to get back out racing together with friends. We were able to have a couple very successful junior programs in the area this summer that had reduced classes, had very safely run classes that were all very separated, and which is part of the answer here. And it returns us to just the grassroots of sailing. And this makes me really happy seeing this photo and seeing the photo in the beginning of the talk tonight, to just think of where we all were in March when all this hit. And we had no idea, any of us, where we were going to be going with it. And luckily, the governor of Maryland has, gave us the opportunity and to be able to get out on our boats again back at the end of May. So with that said, here we were able to put it all together with Sailing World, get us back out there. But if you go to Wednesday nights, Thursday nights in the harbor of, for sailing, Annapolis has been doing this for the last 3 months. And so the nude was just that first weekend that we all got to see it, the culmination of all the weeknight sailing we've been doing. So it was really fun to see. And, we couldn't be happier, having it occur. And again, I think it was pretty much done in a very safe manner.
Awesome. So one other question I got today was, I'll throw this to Zeke and Austin, is, we talk about boats with A-sails a lot, going downwind, tactics, all these things, but we don't talk about boats with quote unquote traditional spinnakers. So, we can start here with Austin. I mean, what are some of the things, with Shifty Puffy a little bit this weekend on your course, especially, that you're looking for going downwind if you were sailing, say, an Etchells or a J22 or J24?
I think probably the biggest thing, I sail a lot of the J24s in that class during the week, and that's kind of the only time I think really I get to go back to the traditional spinnaker sailing. But one thing we really focus on that boat is moving the boat as much as we can with body weight as opposed to the tiller. Like, these boats are traditionally going to be a little bit slower boats and maybe have bigger rudders, a lot of them. So anytime you can steer the boat with the trim of the kite and then the body weight movement in the crew, when you want to soak down a little bit, bringing the boat, the crew up to windward, or if you need to put a little heat in the boat, bringing the crew back to leeward, I think is really, really important. And then obviously communication between the trimmer and the driver. It's kind of a cliche, but the trimmer really can feel locked into the boat with what's going on. And sometimes, especially in the lighter air, the driver might not have as good of a feel for what's going on. So having the trimmer constantly communicating, is going to be key. What about you, Zeke?
Well, I certainly would echo everything that you said. The thing that jumps out to me is the lane management, and for everybody on the courses, like we were just talking about, and how Jonathan was talking about, getting mixed into the other fleets and managing the tactics in the lanes. It's easy to kind of look at your Windex and see if it's pointing at another boat and say, I guess I'm in bad air. That's pretty easy, but it never ceases to blow my mind how big a wind shadow just fleets in general will cast. I mean, there was never wind at the windward mark in any race in this regatta, period, just because boats had been sailing around it, for however many minutes that the race was going on. And, even when you start the race, if the next fleet was half a mile still upwind, you were feeling the effect of that fleet being there with the wind going up and around it. And even trying to if you could just pass to windward of that boat that's coming downwind while you're sailing upwind, you'd think oftentimes that's, you're fine. But even right behind the boats, there's a ton of really dirty, disturbed air that's really slow to sail in. So I think the lane management, and in particular, getting back to these, dead downwind symmetric kite boats, you can't just, like, you're not in your Viper where you can heat it up 5 degrees and go 4 knots faster and clear out of there real quick, and live to fight the next battle. In these, it's a much slower, drawn out, where's my lane going to be? You got to think 5 steps ahead and kind of commit hard early to where your lane is going to be so that you're the least impacted.
Got it. Okay. So this is a photo, and before we talk about this one, a photo taken by our friend Will Keyworth. So thank you to him for taking and providing some of these photos. He took a lot of awesome shots over the weekend that everyone I'm sure has seen on social media. But last question here for Jonathan before we kind of start wrapping things up is, a lot of the boats in this regatta had fairly large crews, right? The J35s and the J105 specifically, they have a lot of people on the boat. Even J80s, J70s, they're all 4-person boats, really. Allberg 30s, the J30. I mean, all these boats have a lot of crew. So, I mean, we don't talk about that often, but, for the people who are crewing on these boats, they, sometimes definitely don't get enough credit for what they do. And, let's talk about that a little bit, how to have more crews be more involved and how they make the teams better. And it was one of the things I noticed this weekend is, crews work their butts off to sail these boats and generally don't get enough credit for it.
It's, again, I think I said it earlier, I wish we'd been able to have a party. The crew is everything to sailboat racing. So in other than even in laser sailing, social interaction at, on the rail, on the boat, on land for laser sailors, we all want to get together afterwards and talk about it. you're guaranteed here in this photo that there's definitely a conversation of something going on, whether it is about the boat race or not. But, you know, a lot of these people are all like-minded. I would suspect they all live, you know, are close in a bubble to one another. And, you know, I think we are thinking about that these days with people we, you know, go sailing with. But for crews that, you know, want to get involved, sailing is a lifelong sport that, you know, that we, you know, all of us on this, on this thread here, we've been sailing our whole lives. And the most important part of it, the most fun thing of it for me is the interaction with people. And for crews, you know, to get together, if you're an owner of a boat, I hope there are a bunch of owners on the call here, we cannot win races without great crew. And, you know, and we have to treat everybody with great respect while we're sailing with them, and get them to love the sport so that they will end up buying boats. And, you know, one of the biggest things I'd like to see sailors do, skippers do, is encourage their crews to move forward and move up, try to get their own boats, or at least, you know, get really such the fire that they really want to be totally involved in the sport. You know, and the last thing I want to say on it is Spin Sheet does a really good job locally with their with going to their website and signing up on their crew finder for new folks looking for crew, or for, you know, current boats looking for crew. They always have their parties in the spring. We can't, you know, they ask their sailmakers for crew. They need help. We need to support the sport. We need to help people find their crews. But, you know, without them, you know, this sport doesn't happen. We'd all be sailing lasers, which is okay too. But without a doubt, you know, they're crucial to us all. And I thank everybody I sail with every time I sail with them, anyone, and it's good fun.
The only thing I would add to that is, you know, I've done a lot of steering and a lot of crewing as well. And every crew position has a role. And I think it's very important for any big crew to talk about, this is your job, this is your job, this is my job. And being, you know, owning your job and doing your job really, really well, and kind of just managing that and not worrying about the other stuff is such an important skill and important trait in any crew. And it's kind of a fun thing to just kind of master your craft. And that makes you the most valuable crew that there really is. While we're talking about crews, sometimes a big part of that is helping a driver, maybe they're newer than you or just kind of inexperienced in a class, and helping the driver get faster, get better. Austin, we had a question about techniques for teaching newer, inexperienced drivers. What do you have to offer there?
So I think, you know, when I get on the boat with maybe a newer owner and maybe they're not as familiar with one design racing, or they're a little bit nervous to be around, like, say, a lot of boats in the starting line, I think you just kind of want to set them up for success. So, you know, if I'm on a boat with a guy that I know is a little bit new to racing, I'm not going to say, okay, we're going to go win this boat right now with, you know, win the committee boat with 20 other boats around there and put them in a lot of traffic. I think, you know, find low density areas on the course to sail in, make sure that, you know, before maneuvers, there's, you know, adequate time for everyone to get set up. Because you know, I think that's another big mistake newer drivers will make, is they hear the word tack and then, you know, the tiller's immediately going over, where, you know, if you wait another 2 seconds and the crew gets set, and then you can have a really nice tack or jive and get going in the right way. And then also just patience and trying not to raise their voices on the boat either is obviously very, very important. I think there's plenty of times where you can go out sailing and win the race, and if you didn't like the people you sailed with, it doesn't feel nearly as good as if you have a crappy day with a bunch of people you really like spending the time with. I think that's just remember why we're all out there, you know, to have fun and further the sport.
Yeah, there's no doubt. The only thing I'd add to that is I've had a lot of success when the logistics make it possible. Have that skipper sail a smaller boat. It seems to always teach them the right driving techniques. If you can put a J35 helmsman into a J22 for a night, or a 420 even, and they go out and you really learn how the boat feels when it heels a little bit one way, or when the main is trimmed harder than the jib, or vice versa. I think there's a ton to be gained for new helmsmen and crew by going back to basics and sailing small boats where the little mistakes feel a lot more dramatic.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is, not to be bashful. If you're a new driver to a certain class is, asking the top guys questions. They generally, tell you their secrets and tricks. And the best thing you can actually do is offer or ask to go sailing with one of the top drivers, right? I mean, if I had a, J70 or whatever, I'd be doing everything I could to go sail with a John Heaton to see what he's doing. Or if I was going to sail a J80, I'd go sail with John White or Will Crump just to see how they're doing it, right? I mean, that's, if you're a new driver, you want to pick it up quicker, go sail with one of the top drivers. Even if it's a Wednesday night race or a practice day, whatever it is, that's a really good way to elevate your game pretty quickly. Just kind of moving forward here a little bit, we have one question for you guys on rig tune, just on a day like Sunday. I think Sunday was really puffy, shifty. What do you guys think about tuning the rig really, really quickly? You don't have to get too in depth into it, but just, how do you decide your rig settings?
At least on our course, we were probably a little bit on the heavier side of like where you want to be on the Viper, and kind of our philosophy has always been to set up for the lulls. You can always kind of do different things with the boat to depower and the puff. So we set up, I think we stayed right at base the whole day. And anytime there was a lot of breeze, we would do all the different depowering measures to get through the puff. But then we were loving our rig setting every time it got light. And that was kind of the way we sailed the boat.
I think the same on our course. On any boat, really, it's always air towards the lighter rig setting for more power. And I think in the absence of the festival racing, as Allan called it, we probably would have been at base on Sunday, wind-wise. But you add in all those fleets, not only does the wind become less because of all the wind shadows, but the water gets way more chopped up. And then you throw in all the power boats that are out on a beautiful day on the Chesapeake Bay, and it just adds for, a thirst for power. So we were below base all day on Sunday, and we figure if we get a puff, we'll be overpowered, but we'd kill for a puff. We'll take it forward either way.
For us, it was a little interesting. We actually were set at base on Sunday, but we were with our mast step aft, which created a little more headstay sag for us at base. And that gave us that ability to still have, strong enough, tight enough shrouds that we never felt like we were, underpowered. And we certainly had enough sag to get through that chop, that lump that Zeke's talking about. And, with all those other classes on the course, there was a lot of leftover chop. And with all that tide we were having to deal with, it's always good to be set light compared to, what normally you'd want to be.
Yeah. Question from Ashley Love. Is it possible to go too far off the rig? And she was sailing a J70. Allan, you sail a bunch of J70s.
Yeah.
You said she had an issue with pointing.
Yeah, I mean, the J70 is one of the kind of unique boats that were out there because the rig is deck stepped. And the telltale sign for me on the rig on the J70 is I'm always looking at the backstay. So to me, if I'm sailing and I always want the rig somewhere between, if I'm thinking quarter, halfway, 3/4 max backstay tension, for me, I try to sail with between a quarter and half backstay all the time. If I'm sailing around and the backstay's all the way off, then the rig needs to get loosened up. If I'm not sailing and the backstay's wailed on all the time, I'm trying to go tighter. So for me, that's kind of trick number one. Depending on which jib you're using, the pointing issue really becomes a function of headstay tension and then how much you can in-haul. So, generally speaking, guys with a J6 may sail with a little bit more rig tension because they need a straighter headstay to in-haul more. If you have a J2, maybe go looser because you're not in-hauling as much and you generate some power that way. So it's a little bit of back and forth. But to me, the J70 telltale sign is always the backstay tension. If you are carrying tons of backstay, you got to tighten the rig up. If you're sailing no backstay, you can probably back the rig off. That would be it for me.
Yeah, I think that's a really well said point. And I think the only thing I would add is that what you're really talking about there in this case is the headstay, right? It's like the backstay we all know it flattens the main, opens the leach of the main, but it's a huge impactor of the headstay tension. And in order to make sure that the headstay can sag, like Jonathan was trying on the J80, moved his mast butt back on the J70. It's just making sure the backstay grosses accurately trim so that when you ease, even when you ease the main sheet off a little bit, the head stay is going to sag more, and that's where your point's going to come from. So that's such an important factor.
Exactly right. So, all right, guys. So we're going to move through to our next slide here, which is our lovely reminder to everyone that the fall promo for One Design Sails is starting up here tomorrow. So anybody who sailed in this regatta in a One Design, feel free to call any of the four of us to chat about your boat, big boat, little boat. It doesn't really matter, but the fall promo is going this next month, and it's really a great way for people to get new gear going into 2021. Get ready. You know, hopefully we're all back kind of a normal sailing season next year, and this is a good way to kind of get all geared up after, you know, the summer and looking forward to the winter or, you know, next year as we get going. So I want to thank the three of you, Zeke, Jonathan, and Austin, for chiming in and talking about the event. And the real beauty of it is, and I'm sure that the three of you attest to, we still have a lot of sailing here on the Chesapeake to do. We have Labor Day coming up. We have
Double-handed.
the NAS race, the double-handed. We have the screw pile, fall series, the ORC regatta, the J105 East Coast, the J24, J22 East Coast, the J111 East Coast. I mean, there's a lot of regattas coming up. Jonathan, which ones did I forget?
Fall brawl for the J70s and the J80s.
Right, the fall brawl for the J70s and J80s. I mean, there's a lot of sailing going on here this fall, which I know I'm super excited about, to do a bunch of events starting with Labor Day this weekend. And I think the point to that is, A, it's going to be fun to be back out on the water, but also to remind everyone that the four of us are here to help. And, you know, we love talking about sailing. And if you guys who are out there need anything, don't hesitate to call or email. I mean, this is what we love to talk about. I mean, it's 7:45 on a Monday night after racing all weekend. We're all tired and hungry and just like everybody else, but we love doing it. So, you know, give us a call and we're glad to chip in. And hopefully soon we'll see everyone at a regatta party. But in the meantime, you know, we like this, the Zoom meeting with everyone, and hopefully we'll see everyone this weekend during Labor Day. And we hope everyone has a good night. And thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you.
See you all soon.
Thank you.